Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have Professor Pixel. We're continuing our dive into the wonderful TV show called Twin Peaks. We're currently on season 3, episode 7. And I have to say, Professor, another episode that seems kind of interesting. It's getting more and more closer, I feel like, to the town of Twin Peaks. And as we get ready to start in and can pick up where we left off from episode 6, I'd mentioned last episode that the very beginning opening theme where you hear Laura's theme. Did you see her in the clouds this time?
Oh, I see her every time. She looks
Okay.
right at me.
Well, take us through this opening scene and we'll just pick up immediately where we left off and we'll get right into it.
Well, it doesn't actually leave us where we left off in the last episode. Why? Because we see a familiar face, though looking kind of scraggly. It is Jerry. He is out in the woods and he's looking around and we don't see anything. He pulls out his phone and makes a call to Ben. And he says, I think somebody stole my car. And Ben is just he's saying, what? What the hell's going on? And Jerry eventually says that he thinks he's high and he has no idea where he is. And Ben is just so over it. And quickly there's a dial tone and you just see Ben with his face in his hands. It's a very quick scene. There's not much to it. I was looking in the woods just to be sure there wasn't something he was looking at directly. Don't know how he ended up there. But the next scene is art. It is fantastic. And that is when we go back to the sheriff's department. There are pages that were stuffed in the door that Hawk just demolished in the last episode. And they are from the diary of Laura Palmer. And these are the pages that tie directly to Fire Walk With Me. Annie Blackburn told Laura that the good Dale is still in the lodge and he's trapped there. And Laura didn't know any of these people. So the fact that she is writing down their names and saying they said this, it's astounding. And Hawk is sure this is what the log lady wanted him to find. So there you have the new Sheriff Truman, Frank, and he is asking pretty much everything. This is a catch-up kind of a scene, which we always enjoyed in the previous seasons. But Hawk is catching somebody new up. That's really the new thing about it. And Frank is asking the obvious questions like, okay, well, Leland, I remember hearing about that, but... And that's when Hawk says that he thinks Leland stuffed the pages in the door to hide that Laura was catching on that it was him. The sheriff mentions what I just said, that Cooper never actually met Laura Palmer. And Hawk thinks if there's a good Dale in the lodge, then the Cooper that came out of the Black Lodge wasn't their Cooper. Truman says, okay, well, I need to talk to Harry about all this and just to get his thoughts. And it's really quick. He goes to his office, makes a phone call. Harry is just too tired. So new Truman doesn't tell him the information and tells him to just go ahead, rest, beat this thing. And that's where the scene ends.
Yeah, a couple of interesting things too that I felt while watching is that in the opening scene when we see Ben out there in the woods, I like how we're seeing parts of whatever the woods are around Twin Peaks, whichever specific place he's in. Maybe we don't know the name of at this point, but we're seeing it during the day, just like we saw with the doctor out in the middle of nowhere in the woods during the day. Somehow that's just really frightening looking, and Ben looks legitimately terrified. It sounds like, even though he's high as a kite, as they say. But let's just state the obvious. We know that his missing car is going to come into play, and we had something really bad happen recently, so I'm assuming those are connected. And we'll get to that if and when that becomes a thing. But I'm glad that Ben's giving something to do as far as a little storyline goes. This next thing, to your point, is a catch up. It works because I think a lot of people may be getting tuned into Twin Peaks when season 3 came out, especially younger generation like yourself, the young 20-something millennial, as I like to say. And if somebody has not watched Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, it was very divisive at the time because of how poorly season 2 ended. And so a lot of people, I think, were like, what the hell is going on here? And I thought it was great and really filled in a lot of stuff from season 1, let's say. And then here it is kind of heartwarming to know that, okay, the actor who didn't want to actually play Harry S. Truman, whatever situation was, being retired, he wasn't a part of the cast by his own choice, I believe. And to see his brother in here dealing with his wife who has some issues, I think he's doing a very solid, understated job, and just trying to talk for a moment to his brother there. So it's intimated that he's got cancer and all that, and he doesn't want to talk to him. It's a nice little touch because it just makes us go, okay, this is probably all we're going to get out of Harry Truman, Sheriff, and it works. It's good. And they mentioned some old characters too, which is nice because it means possibly in the future, if some of them decide to end up being shown in this whole season, we're getting primed for them ahead of time. And if not, they get some lip service, which is adequate too. I don't feel like it was rushed or they were just trying to fit it in. It works, especially with Hawk and Hawk. Boy, he's really aged well too. And also in here too, what I liked is that, okay, they mentioned a lot of the stuff that you and I had speculated on and kind of created a construct about with good Dale and bad Dale. And I think we call it doppleDale and DougieDale, right?
Yep.
So we know that a mass of humanity literally can be formed, and that the electric tree is really like a part of the armed, I think, that was ripped off of the one-armed man who we saw earlier is trying to help Dale, but then also gave him a warning recently about, hey, you gotta like come to your senses, because, well, he doesn't say why, but it's just, Dougie Dale, which is not Dougie Dale technically anymore, it's the good Cooper, but unawoken or asleep good Cooper. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. So I really do like that. But we do get to see here the current Truman actually doing a Skype call, which I thought was kind of neat to the old Doc, to give him a bit of screen time. It's a nice little shout out for the older fans too, or people that really like some of the older characters going over some stuff. And it's kind of neat because he's got an old man's hat on that says "Got Trout." I thought that was neat. And fishing was really a really important thing about the whole first episode, actually, where they found Laura. So I thought it was neat that, okay, they can't just easily get answers from people that were in the episodes before. They're going to have to figure it out on their own because of their situations. So we know that this whole thing's going to start converging. And boy, for a while it seemed like it was so distant, didn't it? And now it's like going to really, really pick up. But we get a transition where we see, was it the place in South Dakota that's coming up? And, or actually, excuse me, there's a scene in here I skipped really, really quick.
You did?
Yes, I did. And it's my boy Andy, because I tell you, I like Andy in this episode a lot. He's got a real bad bald spot. And he's got the poofy hair in front of him to kind of hide it, but you can see it clearly. And I thought, watching him talk to some local hick with a truck about it, it's like, if we didn't know what we knew about Andy and they just shaved that top part of his head, he's older looking in here. He's not aged well, but he's got a more mature, serious, stern look on his face. And yes, he has a pot belly and all that. But Andy does not give off to me dipshit deputy Andy vibes that we've come to know and always assumed was his status quo. And you know what? Sometimes when you go against character, it doesn't work. But here, I think it does, because he's asking this guy, this farmer or whatever he is, about his truck, and the guy's, just hysterical beside himself. Like, I'll tell you everything, but I just can't tell you here. You got to leave. You got to leave. I'll meet you in a couple hours or whatever. So it's like, okay, Andy's going to get drawn into this too. And let me ask you, what did you notice about the truck?
It looked a lot like the truck that delivered the shovels to me.
What else did it remind you of from the last episode?
I mean, there was a truck whenever the one guy hit the kid and pulled off the side of the road to wipe the blood off the front of his car. There was the other truck that was there, and that's what it looked like to me. And with how Andy was speaking, I was pretty sure that the reason why he wants to talk to this guy is because he probably saw the guy run, wipe off the blood off of his truck. That's what I'm figuring.
Well, it just, it's, to me, it's the same truck. So we know that the guy who drove it, who hit the kid, is a real asshole that tried being too manly with that girl Charlotte in the bar. We remember how we talked about him being real gropey and handsy and almost like strangling her there and all that. Just a real asshole. I mean, he did a great job of you know, making us believe that this guy's bad news, even though he might be a little bit of a pretty boy or whatever. And he's just not a good guy. And also, like, to your point, I just think that Andy's going to get involved in something dark, or at least that's what it feels like from this episode. And I go, you know what? I think it's incredible too. I don't think it's the same truck that delivered the goods to Doc in the first episode. The shovels, as you said, the ones he painted gold, because that one I think was a different color. It might be the same type, but I think the first one was red. And this one's different. But if something happened there between the trucks, I may have missed that. So let's just say it's possible. But it's interesting how just a minute or two scene with Andy can really change the dynamic of all these loose ends and go, oh, now they're all starting to connect. You know what I mean?
Yep. And speaking of Doc Hayward, like we were before, we get some information there that's very important. Did you notice?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Audrey Horne did not die in the bank.
Yep.
She was in a coma. And whenever he was talking about Cooper, he said he took Cooper to the hospital and he saw Cooper eventually at one point. He was up, he was dressed, and he was just staring down. He looked down the hall to see him, and doppleDale just stared back. He thought maybe he went to go see Audrey Horne, who was in a coma. Thought that he'd look in on her, but no, there's nothing. And then they end the conversation with a nice joking, a nice jest about breakfast.
Yeah. Dumb old man joke. Yeah.
But
no, I like the scenes. I thought these were pretty good here, tight. And like I said, for some reason, Andy just works for me here, and we know that normally he hasn't. And it seems like the days of him goofing off with Dick Tremaine are so far away and long ago that I'm really liking this, even though there's only a minute or two. Maybe it's because he pulls out and he's checking his watch and he's saying, okay, 4:30 or whatever it was. And he's wearing the Rolex, the Oyster one. I'm like, Andy, you got some class, bro. I'm digging it.
Well, but from there, I didn't mind the Andy scene. I really didn't. But moving on from there, I'm very excited with this next scene because it seems that my theory was correct. I don't want to bring it up because it would have been kind of rude towards Major Briggs, but let me explain. We go back to Buckhorn. Mm-hmm. We see Lieutenant Knox, who was with Ernie Hudson before, and she wants to see the prince. So the detective and the coroner lead her along, and they see the body. And she didn't know that there was a body originally, but seeing that there is, the man was apparently in his late 40s and died within the last 5 to 6 days. She quickly says she has to run and make a call. And it's Ernie Hudson. And she says it's a body and basically says that this is Major Briggs. We also see a figure walking behind Knox. Somebody that seems to be in all black, in case you haven't noticed. And she actually notices a moment, but she quickly gets off the phone with Ernie Hudson, who has to go make another call as Knox goes inside and tells them that no one else can get this body and it won't be their case for much longer. As we see in the background, the guy in all black just passed by.
Yeah, to me, I'd be on high alert if I saw somebody walking down the hallway like that. She she's a ginger, so she's got a certain look to her, but she's dressed really professional. She's got a very piercing stare, so she's got a great presence about her in this military outfit. And we all love Ernie Hudson anyway. We always think of Ghostbusters and The Substitute and other things too. So we like him, but she's really believable. And I don't know if she'll have much more to do about it. But it's a way to work in Major Briggs, even though that actor's been dead. But yeah, while she's on the phone talking and they're cutting back and forth, you see this guy walking, and he's the guy we saw in the jail cell with the evil Cooper, doppleDale, a few episodes ago. And you're like, what the heck? It looks like he's cleaning out what a Mary Poppins thing, like he's a chimney sweeper or something. I mean, but it's a creepy look, and I think this is hard to pull off where it looks legitimate, because it literally is the one shot looking down the hallway while she's talking, and it focuses on her, and we see him walking the whole time. It's like, okay, this kind of, like, between that and Andy, I'm like, this is pretty good. It's pretty intense. There's not a lot of laughing and fooling around in here too. Because she basically says, when she goes back in her after the phone or whatever, that she can't really say anything, but she tells the detective and the forensic lady there that I don't think this is going to be your investigation anymore too. We cut to a picture on a wall of, did you catch it?
Corn.
Exactly right. And the camera focuses in on yet another picture with somebody in front of it, and of course the picture is what we've seen before. It's a Gordon Cole. It's his office, and it's that atomic bomb photo. And where we had, I think, left towards the end of the last episode, one of the scenes was as we saw where Diane was approached, and we're like, oh, Diane does exist. And Cooper's secretary, like we always pictured, because he talked solo to her, on the tapes, what would she look like? She's older, she's dressed well, I guess we could say. I thought it was kind of neat. Albert comes in the office, tells Gordon he couldn't really talk to Diane and we need help. And the one thing about Gordon is he was a little bit goofy, and of course he's played by Lynch. I don't really feel like he's been that way here in season 3. And that the change of that, kind of referring to like even Andy earlier, is also works here to me too, because the fact that he's not just good old Gordon and all that, it makes it seem like it's a little bit more serious, because they both feel like something's wrong. And Albert, even though he's got sarcastic a time or two, he's all business as well. They're both older, they're cutting to the chase. I like it. It gives a sense of dread of what's going on there too. I like that. I don't know if some people might have been turned off by it, but I think it works, because as soon as Albert comes in and they talk about going to see Diane, Albert kind of basically says, hey, you need to come. And they cut to this really insanely richly looking townhome where a young professional is leaving. It looks like this townhome, and of course it's Diane. So I'm going, okay, was he a male escort? Is he gay? Is he a designer? I don't know, because he seems a little swishy, but we've not seen him before. And I'm just going, was he paid? Because he's just picking up his keys and walking out. But I don't really care. It's just kind of interesting, because this is probably, I'm guessing, the most time we're going to see with Diane, and she knocks it out of the park here, because she's basically like, well, fuck you and fuck you and fuck you, and all the FUs that you can sit there and say might be goofy and funny, but you can tell she is so pissed at whatever's happened that we're unaware of as a watcher with what's going on with Cooper, that she just doesn't even want to give them the time of day. But she only tolerates it for a split second here, because was her ex superior here, Gordon Cole. And this scene really works well. And he basically says, hey, we think something's wrong. We don't know why. We need you to basically come and give us your opinion in South Dakota or whatever. And she thinks about it just for a second, even though she's like, yeah, I don't have coffee or cigarettes. She's doing that while they're talking. I thought she did really well here too, especially when he says, hey, this is really extremely important. Can you come? And then it cuts to an extended part of the scene where they're on the plane, but I'll stop here so you can fill in some of the blanks.
Yeah, no, I have in my notes, screw you, because I don't want YouTube to come after us, but it's too late.
Yeah.
It is. And I was not as much of a fan, just with how she was treating Gordon to start with. It just felt kind of, I wasn't really caring for that. But quickly, Diane does get them some coffee, even though she said no, they don't have any. And when Albert tells him that something's wrong, you can see on her face that she is going to go, and they quickly cut to a plane. Cole, Albert, Diane, and Agent Tammy are all on the plane. He gets her this little bottle of like vodka or something, and she takes a small swig, and that's when Tammy decides to show Cole the prints. And the prints seem identical to the prints that original Cooper has, except the prints are kind of backwards. Not exactly backwards, but I think it's supposed to be like his left hand is now reversed for his right hand. Then we see Cole do a weird hand thing. He has Tammy put out her hands, and he goes around each one to say, "You have done very well." And then they get to a pic of doppleDale, and they say how this is the last picture that we have of him in the last 25 years. It's the only one we've been able to get. That was his house, and whenever we got there, somebody else seemed to own it. And you can tell Diane, as she's listening, she's seeming conflicted about this whole thing. And finally, that's when they get there. Diane says that she will give 10 minutes alone and that she's in control. And Gordon Cole says, yes, absolutely. You get to go in. It's all yours. You can lift the curtain yourself. She seems kind of troubled. So she goes in, presses the button, and that's when we see doppleDale. doppleDale says it's good to see her again. And she says, yeah, it's been a long time. Do you know when you last saw me? And doppleDale stares at her a moment and asks if she's upset with him, because he thinks that she's upset at him. And she asks again, when was the last time we saw each other? He says, at her house. And he'll always remember that night. And she says, yeah, I'll always remember it too. Then she leans in a little bit and asks, who are you? And he says that he doesn't understand. And that's when he says, look at me, Diane, look at me. And it's the other way around. She's saying to him, look at her. And that's when finally she shuts the shield. They leave, and Cole quickly goes up behind, thanks the warden, and tells him to keep him there. And that's when he goes to Diane outside, and she is upset. She's kind of distraught. It says, that's not the Cooper she knew. It's nothing about time or how he's even acting. There's something missing in here. And she points to her heart, and clearly she means like a soul. And Cole says that's good enough for him. And they have a short embrace, and that's when she collects herself, pulls back, and takes a swig of the bottle. And he says that she said that there's something that he should know. And she is kind of dodging the question as she looks around and says, we need to have a talk. Later, we need to have a talk. And that's where we cut.
Yeah, so I like how they extended this through, with meeting Diane, then at her townhome, and now they're on the plane, and then everything. It works. I think, like I said, some of the over the top acting scenes have been when it's supposed to be really emotional and hasn't worked. And it didn't work for you, but it worked for me here with Diane being pissy, because it alludes to something's going on. And I think it had to be that way initially, not only for you to notice it, and also with a new recognition of, hey, there's a legitimate face now that we can put with Diane for what actually happens in here. And I went, oh, okay, it works. because of the way it's shot on the plane. You see Albert and Gordon going over information, and Tammy's interjecting and being a part of it as well too. And so yeah, the whole fingerprint thing's interesting because it had to be like reverse, like you said, to get them. So that means something, what we're not sure. And all I know is that it looked like it would maybe be his ring finger when he does the hand thingy with her, making her turn her hands over. And he's going through each one. He says, I don't know how to explain it. It's, I'm very, very happy to see you again. And he's touching each finger as he's kind of going through it. And he talks about one being a spiritual finger. So to me, that just is a one-to-one correspondence to what we just saw on there. Or maybe it's not, and I'm just making that up, but that's what it seems like to me. I feel like just that little interjection there, Tammy's like, what the F is going on? Gordon Cole knows a lot more than what he's saying, which I like too, because again, him being serious and him showing his capability here, I think it's good for this. It lets us all believe in how serious this is, because they keep going back and forth between the conversation between, Tammy, Gordon, and Albert, to Diane just kind of closing her eyes and just, not eavesdropping, but just listening to the conversation in the back of the small private plane. And the picture of Dale, I don't think it's meant to be funny, but there's two things funny. One, the picture reminds me of something like out of Grand Theft Auto or Far Cry or something like that. He looks like a gangster. And then the line that popped for me too, you old classic music fans will love this too. Yeah, this is the last time we saw him was at his mansion in Rio, and then he sold it to some girl from Ipanema. And I'm like, one of the most famous music pieces of all time. They just mentioned in their casual, I thought was good. But you're right. When they go and they have the sit down, because the scene continues when they actually get to the facility, she's terrified. And I don't know about you, but it was almost intimated to me like, and I hate to use this word, but I'm going to, because she was so scared that like she was raped by him or something. And I don't know if that's true or not, but just how dark and serious the tone has been here. There's obviously something bad between them. That's why she's pissed and bitter. And that's all that we know. So to me, it works because of that. Totally changes when she walks down the hallway. Tammy interjects herself as the young, pretty something. And she's like, fuck you, Tammy, and then goes out and she freaks. But there's one thing here I wanted to bring up and ask you too. One, I have to mention just how incredibly gorgeous Tammy is, and all the women of Twin Peaks have this elegant feature about them, despite their age or their build or whatever. I really do like that. They're not just bimbo eye candy pieces, right? But
Yeah.
at the end here, after she knows in her heart of hearts emotionally that this is not Dale, Cooper wants the guy, and told the warden, hey, hold on to him or whatever. When they're out in the parking lot, she loses it. She goes to hug him or whatever like that. The thing that, I don't know if this is just me, but like Diane's losing it. She goes to hug him, and he like can't. He just doesn't reciprocate. He kind of like almost puts like his hands around her like to hug her, but there's not that last, okay, let me just put my hands and just pat you on the back or whatever like that. There's nothing sexual at all about the scene. And I just go, I don't, something's wrong with that scene. I don't know if it's me, or if it's supposed to mean something, or the way it's edited, or maybe I'm wrong, because she gets another bottle of booze out and she goes to drink it then too. And so I don't know if maybe she's become an alcoholic over the years because of some sort of abuse or something. I don't know, but all she says is, maybe someday in the future you and I will have a talk about what happened or whatever, and that's pretty much it. And she just can't even get it out. And you can tell she's so disturbed by it. But yeah, the whole not really hugging back thing just kind of stood out to me. And again, maybe it's just me. What did you think?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think that there's a um, there's a strain in their relationship, obviously,
Yeah.
and I want to know exactly what it is, but we have to wait. We have to wait and get that information later on if it's ever addressed. But overall, I think that Diane, now that she has seen doppleDale again, is going to stick around and get involved with all this. Yeah, I mean that's all I can really say about it.
I thought it was done well. I mean, it kind of almost continues because they cut away to Doppledale being put back in the cell, and he says, "Hey, tell the warden we need to speak about a strawberry. And I thought, okay, he's delivering it real serious. I don't know if he's got the contacts in that makes his eyes look all pupilled. It's a quick scene, so we know we're getting set up here. So this is definitely a doppleDale kind of thing. But we had a great shot of actual Twin Peaks shrouded in mist and all that. And we had saw earlier that Andy was going to be meeting this farmer guy about his truck at a certain place off the side of the road, and Andy's standing outside there looking back and forth next to his car. Nobody's approaching, nothing's happening. This is where you get to see him wearing this just beautiful. I assume it's an older classic Rolex because I think the Oysters were older models. I'm certainly not a watch aficionado. But I've claimed to known some good watches in my life. But when they pop it up, I just went, "Oh my God, Andy, you got some class." It's a quick scene before the next scene, and that's where they bring doppleDale in to see the warden. And this is, I understand that we know doppleDale's probably going to have to get out of the prison somehow, right? And end up somewhere, probably Twin Peaks, we're guessing, just because it seems to be what's going to happen. And that's fine too. It just feels a little forced because the warden takes out the gun. He's like, "Well, why should we talk about, anything or like that?" And doppleDale, done well, I have to say. I in no way see Cooper in this at all. I see doppleDale. I mean, I give credit to Kyle and here the way his hair is long and his eyes are black and his hair is even blacker. His spraying on tan's not nearly as prolific or intense as it was a few episodes ago, but it's still noticeable there too. But he brings up the dog leg that we saw in the car and how other people have it, and he mentions a name like Joe McCloskey or something. And you could visibly see across the face of the warden that the warden gets terrified about it. And he's like, "How do you know about that?" And he's like, "Look, I just want a car by 1 a.m. with a friend in the glove compartment. And I don't want you. I'm not interested in you. That's it." And he says, "You'll never see me again. I've got nothing to do with you." And then they cut away to DougieDale's office with his wife waiting out front. So let me stop there and let you catch up.
Yeah. There's something very important in between the scene where he talks about the warden and the scene where he actually goes in the office. We get to see Andy on the road waiting there, and the guy is not there. In fact, we see this flash of his place, and his door is ajar, and Andy, there's no sign of the guy, and Andy eventually just gets in his car and leaves. But there's the classic dramatic music. Did you notice that?
Well, we haven't heard it that much. So, I mean,
You didn't.
no, I did. They're playing it a bit more, but it's not as gratuitous. Just like Worst Name's not necessarily getting played a lot because
But
it's
it's
not
good. It's
teenagers
good. I missed
doing it.
it.
Well, I was focused on a Rolex.
Uh-huh. But yes, so the guy never shows up to talk to Andy. The scene with the warden, I think it is done well. And apparently Strawberry is the guy's mistress. So if they want the information just kept quiet, then he needs released.
So why do you think it's his mistress?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm just saying we don't know that, but that's speculation, and that's fine.
Well,
That's
he
cool.
says your doppleDale says your mistress Strawberry at the end.
Oh, does he say mistress? I missed that.
Yeah, he says,
Okay.
You don't have to worry about if you get me what I want, you will not have to worry about the legs or your mistress Strawberry.
Oh, okay. I was still focused on the dog legs because I'd forgotten about it. Remember when they opened up the door and there was a chunk of flesh and all this other stuff? It's like, oh, okay, cool. And I bring that up because shortly we'll be talking about flesh here. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, really, bro? You're making a crap ton of money and you're worried about your mistress? I mean, come on, in today's world, nobody's gonna look twice at you about that or whatever.
Well, he also brings up a name. I can't remember the name.
McCloskey.
Yes. So
that's the thing that I thought was more concerning to him.
Yeah. So I think the mistress is just on top of that. Yes, she is.
Actually, thinking about it now, it might tie into something that happens towards the end of this episode, but we'll wait till we get there and we'll circle back to this.
So we get to the statue of the man with the gun. We see DougieDale's wife waiting for him. And we see DougieDale inside, where Tom Sizemore, I can't remember his character name, but it doesn't matter. It's Tom
Mr.
Sizemore.
Sinclair. That's the name that he was circling when
Yeah.
he's in that fugue state. That's him.
Okay. Well, Sinclair is asking why he won't speak with him. And asks, what did you tell our boss? I want to know. And that's when the wife eventually heads inside. And Dale is just scribbling still. When the girl that was flirting with him just a couple episodes ago comes in.
Yummy.
And she says that a few officers are there to see him. And Tom Sizemore leaves the room, and she motions him to come with her. And that's when he mimics her motion. And so she's like, oh, you want me to send them in? Okay. And quickly she goes, sends them inside. And a Detective Fusco, who you might recognize him from The Anchorman.
Champ Kind.
Yeah.
I love it. Whammy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I popped when I saw him. I was like, oh my God, Champ's here.
He eventually wants to ask about the car. And that's when the wife comes into the office and says, what is this about? Oh, the car? Yes, his car has been missing. And they go ahead and ask, was it stolen? And they're all looking to Dougie, and Dougie repeats the word stolen. So they assume that's what it means. And the wife takes complete control of the situation. It disappeared a few days ago, and because DougieDale can't answer anything, and they're the ones responsible for finding it. And ultimately, they reveal that the car blew up. That's when DougieDale's boss comes in to try to help too. This man is very important. What are you trying to do? But they reveal it was blown up. It turned out to blow up a bunch of hooligans that were tied up into a gang that was stealing cars. And the wife says, "Well, there you go." As in kind of that they got what they deserved. And that's when the wife tries to get DougieDale out of the room. The boss mentions they need to talk about what he showed him before, but it can wait until later. So they go outside, and the wife says how the matter is all handled, how she gave the money more than they deserve, and there's this tone. And Dale, we see DougieDale, he pushes his wife aside and as a way to defend her, as the vertically challenged individual who is extremely violent comes in for an attack. But Dougie gets the arm and puts him down to the ground. And we can see in that moment, I believe it's the doppelganger of the arm, not the arm itself, comes out of the ground.
The electric tree.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure it's the evil one. It looks kind of like the evil one. But it says to squeeze his hand off. Squeeze his hand off. And that's when eventually Dale loses the grip. The gun is dropped. And the little guy just runs away. And that's when DougieDale slips back into his former self. Because it seemed a lot like Dale in that moment, getting down to it. And there's a quick situation afterwards. The police are there, and they pull a piece of flesh off of the gun. As we see clips of people saying, "Yeah, it was insane," but Dougie, he's got the situation under control, and that's where we cut.
Yeah, a couple things that I noticed too during these few scenes here, going back to right where you picked up. I said before that just a while ago, early in this episode, that I like a lot of the women that Lynch puts in these shows. I think for the most part, they all have a certain they have a certain ability to act like they're in charge or take control of a situation. And I think obviously what's been going on here, it works, and I think it's been just good acting. Here, when Dougie's being he looks like he's still divining, but he's missing the papers and stuff like that. And Sinclair's not yelling at him, which I thought was a nice touch, like we would expect. Like, what are you talking to him about? Whatever. None of that. I thought, okay, a nice, interesting acting choice too. The way this is shot, though, because they have such beautiful large corner offices on this bottom floor, I think it is, of the building. When everything opens up, whatever level they're at, you can kind of see through into the other offices. It's a great, clean, minimalist look in an office. And when Dougie's sitting there, the camera shifts just for a moment to kind of like expand left and right the view that you see of the whole giant window. And it's one of the floor to window or floor to ceiling type windows, the full windows that you have. So they're privacy. And I thought, okay, they're doing it. And so you can see what's going to happen in the background. So the whole time they're talking, I'm watching the background, and you can see where Rhonda, the receptionist, goes to, walk in, and just, wow, yummy. Again, just in this is probably the single best episode when it comes to women, and there's been a lot of them. But she comes in, and you can tell the way she's acting that even though she's dressed professionally, she's hot for Dougie. Not a sex pot. We're gonna go out and do it, but she's got this serious look of affection. I keep going, okay, do they honestly have something that we don't know about? That whatever, is she going to seduce him? Because it's beyond just light flirtation. It's like if he wanted to go have a romp with her in the restroom when he was wanting to take a leak, she would have done it. She'd have bent over and let him take her. She walks out all like, Miss Thing too. And as soon as Champ comes around the corner, I couldn't take the scene seriously because of him. And this is one of those dialogue scenes where it's who knows what, I don't know, second base, whatever. It's one of these old classic things that it's just, we've seen them before in Twin Peaks, so maybe it's funny. I didn't really care, but I knew there was going to be nothing too serious about it. Okay, they've got the car they know about. Why do we need to talk to them? Okay, let's go home. It's to me, this was supposed to be the funny scene, even though it may not seem like it too. And I keep watching Champ Klein pulling the thing out and making like he's writing notes, and he's not writing anything. It's just so bad. It's so bad. But then again, to your point, when you get after this and you see a vertically challenged individual, you see him in a split second, one fluid motion, karate chop him in the neck and everything. It's great. And seeing the burning electric tree there is I was like, okay. I mean, it's effective. And I thought, okay, he's going to wake up, because he looks around and he's looking up at the sky, and you kind of think, okay, he's coming to, he's going to be, but it doesn't here too. Go ahead and take the next scene, and then we're getting close to the end here. We'll talk about a few things that I think we can circle back to as well.
Well, I'm glad to, because there's a waterfall. Yes, we get to go to the Great Northern Lodge, move past a totem and a lamp to see Ben with his assistant, and they are just standing there a moment. And there's a faint ringing in the air, and she notices it. She says, do you hear that? They move to the corner where it sounds like it's coming from, by the lamp. And whenever they get there, they're like, nope, this isn't it. So they go ahead and move over to by the totem. But it's not there either. And as they're moving, that's when she brings up, oh, by the way, this might be of interest, and shows the old key that was delivered, room 315. And Ben says, wait a minute, that was the room that Agent Cooper got shot in. She doesn't know who Agent Cooper is. And Ben then tells his assistant, you know what, just have maintenance check the hum out in the morning. And there's this tension between the two that's obviously there. But eventually she does go ahead and starts heading out. Ben then looks at the key again before moving into his office. And as he does that, we move back to that corner by the lamp, and we closing in on this, well, the wallpaper, really. And the hum does seem to come from there, but quickly, that's when the scene sort of moves on to Beverly, the assistant, who arrives. Holy, that's Florida for you. Beverly arrives at home, and her husband, I guess, there seems to be on pain medication, as the woman that was there was taking care of him. And whenever she gets inside, he asks where she was and what she was doing, and she says, "I was working. It was late. I had to be there." The guy's named Tom. We don't know who it is. I thought maybe we did, but no, we have no clue who this man is. And that's when she just screams at him not to screw with her. Don't screw this up for me. And honestly, then it's just a very ugly side to her. She is very attractive, no doubt. But this is a very ugly side. The guy is sick. He's sitting there. He's barely able to speak, it seems. And she's just yelling at him.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually Judge. She's like 49, 50 years old here. She's always been a babe, incredibly gorgeous. Um, if you ever watched a lot of sports, especially college basketball, she's a big, I think, Kentucky fan, and she'd always be at the games and stuff too. So that was always a thing to her. But she's just classy looking beauty here too. But the thing is when she's flirting with Ben in there, you can tell Ben's ready to do it. But Ben was always kind of smart. Um, I feel like she's working him, and he kind of knows it. And it's that dynamic we talked about before, that he seems to be at his best when he's working and matching wits with somebody. And before it was Catherine Martell, and now it appears that it may be Beverly. But Beverly's angling for something. We know that she's dressed elegantly. She's very professional. She's older, so she's not, a 20-something secretary that can get quote unquote taken advantage of, which is ridiculous in nature. Because you're absolutely right. When she goes home and her husband's there, the husband knows what's going on. And unfortunately, I think this kind of sounds cynical in saying that when you're in a situation like this where you're actually weak, in this case, this man is weak, her husband is weak, she's going to go seek, comfort and solace in the arms of somebody else typically. And, the whole till death do us part in sickness and health thing, we always want to believe on too, especially if we get married. But the reality of it is at first I thought maybe she was working him because there was like some backstory, and they're trying to hit him for money somehow, some kind of scam, right? Um, but you're totally right when she said she seemed kind of mad, pissy, whatever you said, because she's covering up and, giving non sequiturs to her husband there about what's going on. And he just wants her to be honest and say it. She can't do it. She knows it. And then she turns around on him and snaps and yells at him. And that's the great acting part to this, is that she's basically putting on him, that's saying, hey, if you didn't get sick, I wouldn't have to go back to work. So it's like F you to him. There's a lot of FUs in this episode, it seems like. Not a lot of boning, which we have had a lot in Twin Peaks, but this is a lot of FUs. So it's like implied boning, I guess. But you're like, oh, you're an evil, crafty woman. You're the Catherine Martell, it appears, of season 3 so far. So we'll see how it goes, because we only saw her, I think, maybe once before. And I remarked before about how great she is. I think it was in the first episode when we saw Ben and Jerry. We was like, are you sleeping with her yet? So it's been a few episodes, but she's not a B-level actress. But they're looking for this humming in the office. And they go back and forth. And like you say, there's some flirting going on with it. And it's, I would say, kind of like realistic in the way that I would think a mature couple might go about doing it. Um, but what I got to admit, I have a tough time focusing on where the source of it may have come from. Because even though he finds the key or whatever, and then they say goodnight and they could take it to a more intimate level by exchanging first names, they kind of sort of focus, not, there's a light in the corner that they were at, and they show it, but it looks like it moves to the space behind it, which is a corner, which one side has like a totem pole painted on the wall. So I don't know, but it's that hum we see or have heard, and we heard it with the light when the kid got run over by the car, the pole that had those numbers on it. And also we heard it, I thought, when we saw the covered in black guy, when we saw him in the jail cell when he appeared and disappeared. And I don't know that we heard it in this scene when the covered in black guy was walking down the hall when the military Ginger was on the phone calling Ernie Hudson. So I don't know, but that sound is what sounded familiar to me to it. So I felt like this was supposed to be a bit more important than the flirting, especially even at the scene there where she's bitching at her husband about whatever too. So it's kind of like, all right, they're giving us some depth to this character. So I don't know how this is going to go in, but you're right. I don't think we're supposed to know this guy. And um, yeah, put him out of his misery. Smith and Wesson playing here or something, because uh, he's in a wheelchair and he's got the drip going on and the thing around his nose. He's not looking good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I will say that this next to last scene, for the most part, I felt was a little noticeable, because I think I counted over a minute literally, where you see a guy working at the bar and you see somebody sweeping up all like the peanut shells off the floor, and it's just a continuous shot. Camera's not moving and nothing happens. I'm like, why are they spending 1 minute showing peanut shells getting swept up?
I was waiting for the credits to start rolling. That's what I swore was going to happen. I said, wait for it. Wait for it. Here it comes. It's definitely the moment.
So you know what I'm saying about, right? But this guy behind the bar, okay, what do you remember what he said his name is? Did you catch that?
Jean-Michel.
Right. So he is one of the Renault brothers. And what do we know about them? Well, they deal in drugs and they deal in women. So Green Onions is playing, and I think that's probably David Lynch just saying, hey, let me give a minute to Green Onions. I don't care if he's sweeping peanuts up. He likes it because this is great music. Girl from Ipanema was mentioned, even though they didn't play the music, and there'll be a great piece of music here in a minute. But yeah, he takes a phone call from we don't know who, basically saying, no, he's got to get charged for 2. And it's implied it's 2 underage, I think, blondes that he's hooking up with. So we've got another little angle here with it too. We know that Sparkle, or whatever the name of the drug is, that the one weird dude flipping the dime to the guy that ran over the kid, is involved. So this, I think, at least connects it on one step as far as what's going to be happening at some point during the season. And I'm really curious to see how it's going to go. The scene doesn't really last too long because they cut quickly to about, as we're assuming it's 1 a.m. It's at night in the federal prison there. And we get to see doppleDale being basically escorted out with the, I forget the dude's name that's with him, the guy that was real smart ass looking. And they get into the car, and basically that's it. We see the warden watch them drive off.
You were right.
Go ahead.
You were right. It was all part of doppleDale's plan to get into the prison, get Ray out of there. And I realized it last week, but this episode just confirms it, because Ray was in there and he needed to get him out of there. So even though he ended up spewing that stuff and it looks like an accident, it wasn't. He was planning all along to get into the prison.
So why do you think he needs Ray?
No idea, because this guy seems like an absolute just smarmy fool, honestly. He's not like Deputy Dumbass who's talking like this, but he reminds me of he reminds me actually a lot of Jacques Renault in the way he carries himself. Well, and I can't stand him. He has a very punchable face, I imagine.
Well, here's the thing. He seemed like, when we saw him a few episodes ago, we still got one more scene we'll talk about here, but just while we're here in a moment, there was the scene early on with him and the girl, because these were the 2 people that doppleDale picked out of one of the early episodes too, and they were sitting at the diner eating, and doppleDale, when he comes to the room, knows that these 2 are plotting against him, but he had, I guess, gotten arrested. But that's when he kills the girl, who's trying to play off like, she didn't know what was going on. She was almost basically laying there, in her underwear, trying to seduce doppleDale or whatever, and he was having nothing of it. And so it's like, okay, you know, these guys or this couple was trying to get you. The guy gets arrested, but you're going to break him out anyway. So there's got to be a little bit more to this than I think we're seeing. Either that or I think maybe I missed something. I'm not sure. But this guy, you're absolutely right when you say that. This guy carries himself off he's as tough as nails as doppleDale is. doppleDale's a little kind of creepy. But this other guy just comes across as just very competent, very psychotic. We don't really see him do anything, demonstrating his technical ability in anything. This just guy's got brass balls the way he rocks around, and in a way, it's pretty damn good. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. It's like, okay, he needs him for something. I'm like you. I have no idea what the hell for, but I mean, he just looks like he's just gotten away with murder, literally, and I don't know. It's just.
I'm ready for him to kill him.
There's got to be something more to it than that. If doppleDale needs him, he needs him for something, and I think that something's going to be important. So he just doesn't break him out to kill him. So there's something here that we're just not seeing or missing, or maybe it's to be revealed. But based off what we've seen with doppleDale, we know that doppleDale's got a plan, and he's had one, and he's been one step ahead of everybody when it comes to what it is he's trying to do. So I have to believe doppleDale's that there's something up. There's something valuable, sight unseen, having to do with these two here with Ray and doppleDale too. But that brings us to our last scene, which I think's different. And I wondered as I watched this, wow, would the young 20-something millennial Professor Pixel enjoy this last scene? Because it's a way to do something that's minor but can be effective and doesn't have to be a big deal. We get kind of an ominous drone shot at night over some trees or whatever, with it's not quite the bad music playing, but we see the diner and we see Shelly pouring coffee in it. A bunch of people are in them. Some guy runs in there at night from the
anybody see Billy?
Exactly, and he takes off, and we see Shelly just kind of look around, and it's full of a bunch of average looking people and stuff. But Sleepwalk is playing by Johnny and Santo, which is not quite a guitar piece. It's a certain kind of, forget what you call it. It's not the steel top guitar. It's the one you play. Some old country bands would play it back in the day. I mean, they just sit there and roll the credits while the song plays, and we see is it Heidi, the
waitress? Yeah,
the waitress. You know, she's sitting there laughing with some customers, pouring coffee. She's walking around, and we just see them going about their routine evening business. I thought, oh, this is a little bit of a different way to change the ending, and I kind of like this. I love the music. I love the setting. It feels like we're in Twin Peaks.
This isn't just sitting down and watching a band go ahead and just play a song. This is giving a little slice of the Twin Peaks life in between the story, and I actually enjoy that. Of course,
go ahead.
That makes you stick around, and you're watching to see if anything's going to happen. If you notice, while the song is playing, there is a slight ominous tone that rises towards the end. But
yeah,
there's nothing there.
But the guy that runs in, it literally almost seems kind of laughable. Like, okay, who's this guy? And he runs out. It's not like they focus on the guy or whatever. He looks kind of messy and sloppy. But what does he ask?
Has anybody seen Billy?
Do we know a Billy?
I can't remember a Billy. I know Bobby, but...
Well, we haven't seen Bobby, but...
Yeah, I might just be forgetting who Billy is.
We don't know who this Billy is, do we?
No, so...
Unless it's the name of a character that we haven't put a name to because we haven't heard it yet. I don't know. So we'll see. But damn it, again, it's simple and it's effective. Because now we're like, who the hell is Billy? And we're like, whoever this Billy is, it has something to do maybe with the Roadhouse Diner. Or the diner, or the Double R, I should say. So I'm like, okay. It's a nice little, simple, easy way to accomplish a lot of things. I love little endings like that. It's great. It's very effective.
Yes.
Overall, what was your take on this episode?
I think it's actually a really good episode. We finally get more of Twin Peaks. And I feel like that's really been missing. I like seeing Dale. And even though it's really hard sometimes to go through DougieDale, overall, it's very nice to see Twin Peaks again. To see the town that the show is named after. But I really enjoyed this episode. I am looking forward to the next one, and I hope we get more like this.
Yeah, I liked it too, and I like how sometimes they stick with if I feel like it's a serious scene, like here the whole FBI thing with Tammy and Gordon Cole and everybody in the plane. I like and Diane then they just do that because we got to a point in season 2 that we've talked about where they went off the rails where you're getting your A, B, and C level plots and you were getting like 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Okay, come back for commercial, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, and it was such an easy template that here you can kind of go, no, I'm going to stick with this plot for a while, and this one's going to be minor. It may throw off the pacing of some of the angles, and we may forget about some characters. Like we've seen Bobby early on, but we haven't seen anything since then. But to me, it's working. My only frustration, I think, would be a little bit of maybe not knowing some of the names of the characters. I feel, and so we're going by function, which is okay because I know anybody that listens to this knows everything about it times 10, so that's great. But as far as a first watch goes, I think it's been coherent. I think it's doing good not to just mine everything that is from the old Twin Peaks that we think we know and love, or try to make amends for things that might not have been good. It's basically saying, yes, this is Twin Peaks, but this is Twin Peaks 25 years later, and it's modernized too. Just like this last scene here, we don't know who Billy is, but we see the diner, but we see it from a different angle. The camera's way in the back, and you see the diner as a really big full diner with just average people in there. It's not just those one or two little stands that we saw so often in season 1 and season 2, and it does feel like it's in 2021 is the time of recording of this here. You can picture yourself in there, and that's one thing I've loved about season 3 so far is that it looks like it is updated, even though we're all over the place: Philadelphia, New York, South Dakota, and of course Twin Peaks. So I feel like we're saving a lot of Twin Peaks for obviously not the beginning, but later. It's making us want it more, and I think that's a good thing. Not just giving us 100% Twin Peaks. That anticipation's building up to me. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Twin Peaks season 3, episode 7. Another solid episode. This thing just keeps humming along. We're gonna be doing episode 8 next week. So thanks for listening. Thanks for following along. I've received a lot of likes and notifications about the episodes too. People are really interested in having theories. Love it when people offer their own opinions about it, especially when it's things that aren't necessarily 100% set in stone, factually speaking. That's the fun part about Twin Peaks, is not just watching it, but having an opportunity to talk about it. And of course, talking about it with everybody here that's fans of the Extreme Movie Show. Have a good night. As always, everybody, thanks for spreading the word about the Extreme Movie Show. Take care, good night, and as always, stay extreme.